Welcome everyone. I'm here with Arjun Malhotra.
Yes, so I go in at least once a year.
You were born in Kolkata?
So I learned my mental math there.
What was your rank?
32.
Your rank was 32 in IIT at that time?
Yeah.
Wow.
Petrol was 63 paise a liter. No business plan, no money. But so my cash flow came automatically.
So I'm here with Arjun today. Arjun started HCL and has been a long supporter of IIT Kharagpur. Arjun, want to say hi?
Hello, hi. Everyone, good to be here.
Thank you so much for your time, Arjun, today. And this is like more of one of our stories where we are talking about journey of Arjun, how he started from Kolkata, then moved to Delhi, and then the whole journey about starting HCL and then going through different companies, merging with big companies, and then now being in Silicon Valley, and now thinking of being in India for a lot more time.
Yes, yeah, it's been a great innings. I've had a lot of fun.
Arjun, I don't know if you remember me, but we met at IIT Kharagpur in 2016.
I remember. You were VP Gymkhana, I think.
Yes. So I still have that photo from I think 2016. I met you outside the technology guest house. And, it was really inspirational for me to be able to see such a successful alumni from IIT Kharagpur, visiting IIT Kharagpur. I think what that visit was about, was it for, I think, Amin Farooqi?
Yes, so I go in at least once a year for both the GSNL school and the Amin Farooqi Innovation Center. So, just go in and see what's going on. I try and have people from those areas go in and give them advice. But just once a year, I like to go in and meet people, see what's going on, what are the issues. I know the GSNL School of Telecom had tried for many years to get a master's program, to give a master's degree. That took some time. They had to convince the Senate and stuff like that. But, so help them push that through a little bit once I felt they had the capability of doing that instead of just, doing research and stuff. So, yeah.
Very cool. So on this show, this is more of me just trying out something with KGP 2.2. And I think just seeing you as an inspiration in this journey about how much you have achieved. I think this is more about creating a lot of inspiration for KGPians as well as people from India who want to build global companies. I think maybe what I want to start with is your early age today, and you are from Kolkata. You were born in Kolkata?
I was born in Calcutta.
Okay, so tell me the early years, before getting into Kharagpur, some things about that.
So I was actually born in Calcutta, and my grandfather, Dr. Sundarlal Hora, was a fairly well-known scientist. He was president of the Indian Science Congress in 1954. So he when I was born, he was director of the Indian Museum, which is it's on Chaurangi between Kid Street and Southern Street. And so when I grew up, I was a few years old. He used to go walking around Victoria Memorial with his friends, and they would be talking whatever they were talking. I'd hold his finger and walk with him. And to keep me busy, he'd tell me 2 plus 3, 4 plus 5, So I learned my mental math there, because I couldn't use my fingers since he was holding my hand. So I had to do it in my hand.
This is a funny story.
Yeah. But, so I've always felt comfortable in math because from that time. Because I was good when I was in school. I was ahead of most of the kids in the class. In fact, when I went to nursery, Loreto House, the teacher used to write the problem and she'd draw those 2 lines to say, I would give the answer. So I was thrown out of the math class as a disruptive influence and sent to Bible knowledge.
Ah, wow.
But whatever. He passed away in 56. That's when my grandmother and my dad got posted to Delhi. So we came to Delhi, and I've been in Delhi since 1956.
Since 1956.
Yeah, so I was 7 years old. So
okay, so math was the way for you to probably get into IIT too, right?
Absolutely. Actually, IIT was a little different. What happened was, then I did 4 years in St. Columbus in Delhi, and then My dad got pulled up for the 62 war. My mother got a Ford Foundation fellowship to come to the Howard School of Public Health. And so both the kids had to go to boarding. So I went to Doon School. My sister went to Tara Hall, Simla. And then when my mom came back a year or so later, they couldn't afford 2 kids in boarding. I was close to senior Cambridge, so I was left. My sister was pulled back to a day school in Delhi, Mater Day. What happened is one of the summer holidays, my mother had got a spool tape recorder, Grundig TK20, I remember. Nothing to do, summer holidays. I decided to open it up and very carefully, and I put it back, but it didn't work.
That's like, I think, even like when I was in 11th, 12th, I would be like very curious to fix things, but I will end up breaking them and they never get fixed.
Fortunately, I didn't break it, but it didn't work. So my dad got really upset because he used to play his KL Sehgal songs and all that on that. And so he finally got it repaired. It must have cost him a fair amount. But I got a proper firing. And so I decided, I told myself one day I'll become an engineer who will be able to do this, you know. And so that's how I decided to become an electronics engineer. No other reason. And I also decided on IIT because it was based on your own merit, not on someone your dad knew or something like that. I didn't have too much pressure because I used to play cricket for Doon. And so that automatically got me into St. Stephen's.
Okay, yeah. Because they had like some sports.
They had a sports quota. And cricket in Doon would be part of the quota. So, and you know, I'd got a first division in senior Cambridge, so it wasn't even a stretch for them. But so I had no pressure. So when I did the IIT entrance exam, I had put pressure on myself because there were 30 seats in electronics at Kharagpur. And only Kharagpur had a separate department of electronics. Everyone else had electrical, and Kharagpur also had electrical. So I thought, you know, if my JE rank is less than 30, then no one can stop me getting electronics. So that was the pressure I put on myself.
What was your rank?
32.
Your rank was 32 in IIT at that time?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So I was a little nervous when I went for my interview, but there were people, I was 12th in North Zone, so there were people in front of me who wanted mechanical. So I felt, yeah, I'll get my electrical.
Very nice. And I mean, so you were like very clear about IIT Kharagpur, or there was like in your mind about going to other IITs?
Very clear. And in fact, my grandmother, my nani, she felt that I'd spent 4 years in a hostel in Doon. I was going to spend 5 years in Kharagpur. She thought if I stay away from home for 9 years, my bond with home might not be as tight as she would have liked it to be. So she put pressure on her brother-in-law, who owned a company, instruments company in Delhi. I'm on their board now. And he told me that if you get if you do mechanical and you get a first division, I'll give you a job for 2,000 rupees a month.
2,000 rupees a month?
Yeah. I stayed back in India, DCM, as a senior management trainee. I got 950. And I thought that that was a king's ransom in those days. But I wanted to do electronics.
So I think, so I understood, like, you know, getting into IIT, this electronics was a big deal for you. You got in, you valued merit at that time that, hey, I want to go to a place where I am going on my own, not because of my dad's or mother's connection. It's like me going in. So like, now tell me about like what did you find once you got into IIT? Like, was this like meeting your expectation as you were like, hey, how was it that time?
So, you know, getting into IIT was fine.
Yeah.
Once you get in, you settle down, you sort of decide to take it easy, I guess. So what
When
happened,
you say not taking it easy means you don't have to study once you get in?
No, you have to study, but you know, you also enjoy life, do things, make new friends, all that kind of stuff. And I used to go to Calcutta. My mother's brother, my mama, he was in Calcutta. I used to go there every weekend. So I used to take the Bombay Express, the 1 o'clock train on Saturday. We had half day Saturday, and come back late Sunday night on Ranchi Express. And so that's really what happened was that was all strange. So when I joined IIT, I got a merit scholarship. I was rank-wise, I was the 5th lowest rank, if I use that term.
Fifth lowest?
There were 4 people whose JE rank was better than mine.
Wow. So they were like among top 32 people, there were like 5 people who joined IIT Kharagpur.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. So 2 of them I know were in electronics. Naga had come, I think, 8th All India, and Mittal had come 27th. Because Mittal was one, he was standing in front of me. He asked me, what should I do? I said, I'm doing electronics. He said, I'll also do it. So, whatever.
Yeah.
So, when I first term when the results came, we had 3 terms. First term, second term, and third term was the whole year's course. So when the first term results came, we had 23 people in our class. I was somewhere in the middle of the class. And I thought to myself, what happened? Maybe didn't mark it properly, etc. So the next time I did it, I was a little better. I was still towards the middle of the class, but a little better than the first term. Then I realized that I'm probably going to lose my scholarship.
Oh, merit cum scholarship was...
There was pure merit, right? And I hadn't told my parents at home so that extra money was very useful, right?
Yeah.
So I really worked hard in my third term. And I managed to come on the merit list, but now I was 16th. I joined when I was first year started, I was 5th. End of first year, I was 16th. I still remember. 21 people got the merit scholarship. Then I told myself that, look, I cannot leave the institute in a position lower than what I joined. So then I worked towards that. And I think you don't get positions, but from grade card average, I think I was pretty much there. I would guess so. I mean, no one does it, but I think I was pretty close to that.
Very cool. So during your IIT days, so looks like for the scholarship, which you didn't tell your parents, it became important to get the grades. Outside of that, like what were you involved with at IIT time?
So played a lot of games. Actually, I played cricket for IIT. I played basketball for IIT. And for the RP Hall, I played football. I played hockey. I boxed. I played badminton. So I acted in plays, and Amitabh Banerjee and I got the best debating team in my first year. So did a lot of extracurriculars.
Wow. So you said you did inter-IIT like you played for IIT means you inter-IIT?
I played for IIT, yeah.
Oh, so you were an inter-IIT player as well?
I represented IIT Kharagpur.
Wow.
And I was actually the backup goalkeeper for football also. Did a lot of things.
So during your IIT, looks like you were very much into extracurricular. You were very good at studies. Like, tell me, like, as you graduated, did you like sit for placements? Did you look for a job? Like, how was the scene at that time?
So it's funny. I had decided to go abroad, and I had decided what I wanted to do. I actually did not. Computers was an option in that time, which I did not take. I took control systems. And I was going to come here and either do a master's and PhD in Stanford or Berkeley and work for NASA. So I was in my mind at least I was clear. What happened was, and I didn't even apply for jobs because I said, why take someone else's chance or whatever. What happened was my mother sent me a cutting of DCM management training.
DCM management.
Right? Senior management training, they called it at that time. And I'm a sucker for logic, actually. She had one line in it which said, interviews are like exams. The more you do, the better you are at them.
Oh, okay.
Which, if you look at it, it's very logical.
Yeah, it's like...
So just to acknowledge that, I filled up that form and I sent it off. I sent it off to... And I forgot about it. The one more thing, 2 things happened. One was, I had also decided who I wanted to get married to. Friend's sister. And so when I talked to her, she said, look, I told her, look, it'll take me 7 years or so PhD by the time I get a job and come back. And she did say that, look, I don't know if she can withstand family pressure for that long, not to get married. So I talked to her father and he said, how can I get her married to someone who doesn't have a confirmed job?
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's so very logical. Like,
Yeah. So I thought, let me take a job, get confirmed in a year, get married, and then come abroad.
okay.
Then no one says anything.
Yeah, solve the family thing, and then I'm like on my own, and then kind of, okay.
And actually, one more thing happened. There's, you've been to IIT, so there are some people who are smart people, but they get nervous exam. So, when you're walking for the exam, they say, oh, kya, ye aane wala hai, kya aane wala hai? You say, Taylor's Town, you say, oh, wo to maine padha hi nahi. I haven't studied that at all, kind of thing. But they're just nervous. They're very smart people.
Yeah.
One of them was in our class, and he was very keen on this job. So he said, yeah, why don't you do the test? I'll sit next to you and I'll topo from you. And his logic was, if we get caught, you don't give a damn. I'll take the risk. Again, logic, you can't argue with that.
Yeah.
So we did, both of us got to the next stage. Then my interview was one day before his. So I went for the interview. He said, check, what question they're going to ask. So I did the interview, he did the interview. For some reason, he didn't get in. He went off to London and he worked there for a while. Now, it's an ego issue. Some 12,000 people had done the exam. Now 30 people are called in for the final
interview.
After this interview, the next level interview. And 8 or 12 people will get chosen. So then it becomes an ego issue. I was in that 30. So I went for the final interview.
And you remember your mother's line that, hey, it's like interviews are like exams. The more you get better.
Yeah. And I got a telegram, 950 rupees.
Wow.
My dad was sitting in Calcutta at that time. So when he found out, he sent me a message saying, it took me 10 years to get to a 4-figure salary kind of thing. But whatever. So I'm in Delhi, I was staying at home. So, you couldn't ask for anything better than that. In fact, what had happened was, because I was going abroad, we wanted to take a loan. And so we'd taken a life insurance policy, because in those days you needed that. So I was paying 300 rupees a month. My parents were planning to pay 300 rupees a month for the LIC premium. And so since I was staying in India, I ended up paying that. And I was staying at home, so I told my mother I have to pay so I used to pay her 250 rupees a month.
You made 950, you get...
No, the tax also. So I used to get 750, out of which 550 went. So 200, and I still lived like a king. Because the entry fee, the fixed fee for, let's say, the discotheque at the cellar was 2 rupees 50 paise. So think of, 200 rupees was a lot.
That's a lot of money at that time.
Petrol was 63 paise a liter.
63 paise? ये कौन सी year की? Which year?
1970.
1970. Wow. That's a very different...
I used to know how many 10 rupee notes I have in my purse.
Wow. That's a lot of... 10 rupee note is a big money at that time.
Yeah. So you knew how many 10 rupee notes you had in your wallet. Now you probably don't know how many 500 rupee notes you have in your wallet.
Yeah. So 1970, you joined this job. You're living in Delhi.
DCM. 1 year they run you through an MBA type training. They have 1 week of classroom and then 4 to 6 weeks of on the job. And you go to different units in different disciplines. Let's say you do inventory, you do finance, you do marketing, and you report to the general manager and you do a project at each place. But you report only to the GM. So
how long did you end up working there?
So I worked there for 5 years.
5 years.
A little under 5 years.
And then what happened to the plan abroad?
I kept it open. After 5 years, they said you have to do your GRE again. I can't do my GRE now. But the good thing was what happened. I would have gone abroad after 1 year. DCM decided to get into electronics.
DCM, okay.
So they were a conglomerate. They were doing... they were, of course, textiles, everyone knows. They had Rath Vanaspati. They were doing rayon tire cord. They were doing fertilizers. They were doing chemicals. So they were a conglomerate. They decided to go get into electronics. And I don't know, maybe I was the only electronics engineer in the company because they didn't need that profile. So I got called by the executive director who was in his division was doing electronics. And he told me, look, we are going to go, we need someone to head R&D and marketing, R&D and production, and someone to head sales and marketing. So depending on who we get in the market, the other job we want you to do.
That's kind of funny. We will find the guy from outside, and then whichever is left, you
they
take
didn't
it.
know what was there.
Yeah.
So I was told. So they found someone from Indian Telephone Industries for production, and they got a PhD IIT Delhi person who'd gone to Tokyo PhD. He headed R&D. And I was told, you're going to head sales and marketing.
So you got into sales and marketing. You were passionate about electronics. That's why you went to IIT, and even at DCM, you were initially doing a lot of like tech core work, right?
Not really. I was management trainee. They were telling me about, but I did interact very deeply with the technical people when we designed our calculators and computers, and learned not just electronics, but a lot of things on mechanical and plastics and all that stuff. Because when you look at a product, it has multiple parts. So did a lot of that work and ended up. It was good because I could technically discuss it with the R&D people. I understood the terms. I knew what they were talking about and stuff. But I ended up driving the field sales force. They then decided they obviously must have realized that I was straight 1 year out of college. I didn't know the market. So they also must have felt a little uncomfortable. So I was a 9th batch management trainee. Shivnada was a 7th batch management trainee. And he was working in the same division, textile division. And he had done a brand for them called Lord Jim shirts. Because DCM was known for, DCM was known for Latta and the Suti. So what had happened during World War II, everyone was price gouging because there were shortages. Lala Shriram, who started DCM basically, decided that he would give basic cloth at fixed price to everyone. So he opened stores in every village actually, in North India at least, and he had a price list, a printed, published price list. And he gave you basic latta and the suti, basic grey cloth, if I use that term, that people used. And everyone, my parents' generation, there was a loyalty to the brand because they felt during the war, he didn't price gouge us. He gave us at a good price. So if you look at that generation and talk to them, if you know anyone who's in their 80s and 90s, and talk to them about DCM, they would know. They missed the terry cotton revolution. So what happened was Mafatlal and all came up. And so what Shivnada had done was he had taken their basic cloth and got it dyed and all that, made shirts, and was pushing a branded product with a higher margin than what they were getting for their normal cloth.
So now, now there is a journey that got started, about HCL.
So we started calculators. Now what happens is, calculators is also an assembly job. It's like PCs became, assemblers made PCs, assemblers were making calculators also. Right.
Made in India calculator?
No, you import the chips and then you do the rest in India. So instead of doing plated through hole printed circuit boards, you use single layer, instead of...
And at that time, where were they importing the...
Yeah, Silicon Valley had just actually, again, the whole story was what happened was Lyndon Johnson reduced the money that was going to NASA. And so a lot of people got laid off. They came out to Silicon Valley and realized that they were ahead of industry. What they were doing was way ahead of what industry was doing. So a lot of garage operations started to make chips.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So these people from NASA, they were laid off from NASA, and all of them came here who were like, okay, now we know so much better than anyone else out here.
So we might as well,
do okay.
So companies started and, lots of chipsets came out. There was Mostek, electronic arrays. I mean, they were Varadyne, and a number of them failed while we were developing the calculators. But once all that settled down, then there were companies that survived and they were doing quite well. And you'd get a standard chipset. They'll tell you the logic. You put it on a printed circuit board, put it in a cabinet, put little power supply and keyboard, and you had a calculator. Now, technology-wise, you could use high-impact polystyrene as the cabinet material, which is easier to do, cheaper to do, but is quite fragile. If you can bump or it falls, it's likely to shatter because it's stretched. The plastic is stretched. We used a mold with ABS, and ABS is got sulfur in it, and so it's much more durable. So aircraft wheels, the tires, they have sulfur. So when the plane lands, you see the tire goes pretty flat and comes back. It has a longer life, but it has that play. That screw, not to that extent, but having ABS, the S is sulfur in the plastic that goes into cabinets, but those you have to mold because it comes as a powder. Right. So use that. If you look at the keyboard, like today's keyboard, I have a problem. Every 6 or 8 months I have to change my keyboard because the A and E and all rub out. Right. What we did was double injection mold. So the A was actually a plastic piece that was molded into the keyboard. So it never rubbed out.
Okay.
It was called double injection molding. And then the key you used was the reed switch. I can talk about technology that we did for a long time on that. But two things happened. One is that cost was higher than someone who just doing an assembly. B, our overheads were higher. Because we are office and blah, 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 all that. So how do you compete? So we ended up saying, let's put a strong R&D, and instead of selling an off-the-shelf product, let me sell a specialized product. So let's say a statistician. Now he wants mean, median, standard deviation. If I can write the thing on an EPROM and give him a single key, and so what we would do is take the standard machine, add our little logic in it, and then sell it. And it was a proprietary item because no one else had that. And so we'd get a real premium. So when people are selling a calculator for 5,000, I'd be able to sell it for 9 or 10 or 14 because I had those. Right. And because we had those, they would buy our normal machines also.
Okay.
At a slightly higher price than the
So you found a very specific niche where you were like, competition is very hard in this market because of like just the cost is very lower. You are like, we will just focus on this niche.
Yeah, the whole idea was there was a big market for statisticians. So in that market, we had nearly 100% market share because we gave them a machine that was relevant to them.
So I think I might have missed. So Shivnadar was management trainee numbers in the 7th batch.
I was 9th batch.
You were in the 9th batch. How did you both kind of met together?
So we were, first of all, management trainees sort of stick together. It's a little bit of a
small group.
Well, they are like Brahmins. They sort of, they feel they're different. People don't like them because they are on a fast track, stuff like that. So they tend to just hang around with each other. So I knew him because we used to hang around, have lunch sometimes. When I go to head office, he used to be there. We used to talk, gossip, usual stuff that happens in company. Right. That's how.
So you both became friends, and then you both were like, DCM say we should get out.
No, so what happened was we did this for 5 years. Everything was going fine.
So this was a part of DCM. Like,
it was a part of it was a part of textile division. In DCM there were multiple 4 or 5 divisions. This was part of textile division. What happened was DCM. So again, purchase of cotton and purchase of soybean. DCM used to buy soybean also. Is a satta bazaar type of thing. So there's a guy who's supposed to know when to buy. Everyone follows his advice. He has no logic. So DCM they got a computer center, they got people. They tried to take the logic, they tried to take this guy's gut and put it into a computer program so they can predict when to buy cotton. So after a couple of years, they developed a LP type program and they put the variables in there. And then they tested it for the last 2-3 years and realized that if we had bought cotton from the program, we would have done much better. Little realizing that when I look at the past, I know 100% of the data. When I look at the future, I don't know 100% of the data. But they decided in their wisdom to buy cotton on that basis. So they ran the program and it said, this is a good time to buy cotton. So they bought a lot of cotton. 2 weeks later, the government announced some massive import of cotton from Egypt. Right? And prices crashed. So DCM got stuck with high-priced cotton.
High-priced cotton.
Now, cotton is 60% or more of your end product's cost.
Oh, wow.
So they got into a situation where, I mean, how do I put it? If they produced anything, their losses would increase. Because they're the cost of production. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember the CFO telling them that just shut the factory, give everyone their salary, you'll have less loss than if you run the factory. You know, conceptually, it doesn't make sense, but
if you keep investing in this business, you're gonna
not that you've already spent this money, right? Forget it.
This is already gone.
You can't. If you produce, you lose more money than what.
It's kind of interesting, just like how the policy, a little bit of policy in a minute, just changed the whole game.
And so what they did was they said, no increments, no promotions for 2 years. Obviously, because suddenly they were going to have big loss. Now, we were a small part of textile division, was maybe 100, 150 crores, some number like that. We were 1.72 crores. But we had, out of the 172 lakhs, 72 lakhs was profit, roughly. Okay. Now, and you're, what, 25 years old? You don't, I mean, you don't suddenly see, okay, this is where I'm going to end up my career now is I'm going to be flat. And, you know, we thought we knew the market. So 6 of us talked and decided, let's go out. And the other thing that happened was DCM, because India was a socialist country, and there was an act called the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. So no private large company like DCM was allowed to get into any new area. So we took the line that we had made calculators, we made programmable calculators, and the computers is a programmable calculator, just a different size, runs a different language. Their advice internally was that no, the government won't see it that way, and so you will get fined if you get into this new area.
So DCM couldn't get into it.
So they decided not to get into it. So we thought, you know, microprocessors were just coming out. And we had already designed a computer based on that in DCM. We thought if they're not going to do it, we might as well do it on our own. We know the market. That's how 6 of us left. No business plan, no money. But, you know, microprocessors were going to change the world. Belief in that, and that we thought we knew the market.
So in a way, India being a little more socialist, the government putting restrictions on what a big conglomerate can go up for, and you being a part of it, you are seeing a market emerging, and you are like, we can't do this work here. This is gonna be big. Let's go with that conviction. Get out.
Yeah. So what happened was, since no money, no nothing, I mean, sometimes things just happen. So Televista was a big TV manufacturing setup. They used to make calculators, but they couldn't sell them, or weren't very good at selling them. So Ved Luthra, who was the founder and managing director, whatever, of Televista, he approached us. And he said, why don't you sell my calculator? I will give you 90-day credit. We'll sign a hundi. 90 days later, and what we'll do is you tell me your estimated cost of sales. I'll tell you my estimated cost of production. Right, there's a profit in the middle. Let's say it's 100 rupees. We'll split it 50-50. And that will be the value of the hundi in 90 days. Right? And basically, any adjustment, because you might spend less, I might spend less, more, we'll do it in the next hundi. So suddenly you got 90-day credit. You got a supply of calculators. Right? So my cash flow came automatically.
So then your company's only job was sell this calculator. So you six of you were like, we will be able to sell this calculator in
Yeah,
the
so
market.
the whole idea was sell the calculators, make money, invest that into developing our own computer. So that's why initially when we started, company got formed in October 15th, 1975. We didn't have any R&D people. We recruited them only in December once we made some money.
So you were all a bunch of like 6 sales marketing people who were like, hey, we know we can sell this out.
So 2 people went to Bombay, 2 stayed in Delhi, and 2 went to Calcutta. I went to Calcutta with now late Pammi Puri. We were in Calcutta. And then by December, actually not by December, by March, when things looked settled, Ajay from Bombay went to Madras and opened Madras office. I came from Calcutta to Delhi. Subhash Arora ran the calculator business in Delhi, and Shiv and I moved into the computer business. That's how that whole thing worked. And yeah, it was, I mean, it's quite interesting. So when we went, we repriced the whole calculator range. And so when I went to Calcutta, I talked to the local sales guy there, and who was doing multiple things. So he was going to be pulled off and put on TV only, so that we then handle calculators. But I asked him, who's the hottest prospect? So he said there's this company called Das Reprographics on Taratala Road in Calcutta. They want a printer calculator. So what we did was the demo machine, we cleaned it up completely, made it look like new. I said, come with me. I went with him to Das Reprographics. So the price that Televista had for the printer calculator was 7,500. We were planning to price it at 5,500. Okay. So I went there, gave him a demonstration, blah, blah, and said, you know, what would you, he said he's interested in the machine. I said, what do you want it for? So he said, if you give it to me for 6,000 rupees, I'll buy the machine. So I told him, okay, if I give this machine to you at 5,500, but you give me the check right now. The guy agreed. So he did the order, he did the check, we left the machine there.
Wow, so you gave away the demo one for 5,500.
Yeah. We cleaned it up.
Yeah.
So I took the check, I bought a ticket in the Kalka Mail. Those days we used to have third class, unreserved. But for 8 annas, you could get a seat. So I paid the 8 annas from my pocket, pinched. But I sat on it, and overnight I got to Delhi at night. It used to leave in the evening, get to Delhi at night. So I was staying, the office was in the Barsati of my grandmother's house. I was staying there. So in the morning, I'd go to office, said, hey, I've got a check. They said, oh shit, the company name hasn't been registered. So then Yogesh Vaidya had to go and make sure that he got that name. Otherwise, how do we open a bank account and put the check? So that's how. So interesting, those early days.
So now you are making profit. You are like now building out an R&D side of it.
Yeah, we recruited 2 people, S. Raman, who was the head of director, and Mahendra Pratap, who was hardware in charge, head of hardware.
Both of them. And then you started like doing R&D and building your own computers.
Yeah. Well, we started building our own 4-bit programmable calculator that we had built in DCM. Because we thought DCM was not going to sell it, right? The computer license, we realized there were no licenses available. The government, anticipating that computers was going to be a big thing in the future, restricted all licenses to state and public sector.
Okay.
So that's how we went to UP Electronics Corporation, who had a license, and said, why don't we do this for you? We'll take the license and set up what is called a joint sector.
Joint sector,
yeah. So the UP Electronics Corporation is supposed to encourage companies to get formed in UP. So joint sector structure was 26% government, which is UPLC, 25% promoters, 49% public. Right. Total equity was 20 lakhs. So 49% is 9.8 lakhs. the cost of going public was more than 9.8 lakhs. So indirectly, the promoters took that 49. So indirectly, Microcomp and promoters owned 74%.
74%.
And then over a period of time, we bought back initially 16% and then 10%. Because
From the government?
They're supposed to be a development agency. They're not supposed to hold shares.
Oh, I see. So in India, like if I'm understanding the history of like India, like very socialist, they don't like very big companies. They try to like...
No, only public sector companies could be big. Yeah, BHEL, all these people, they could.
But now like everything has pretty much
Changed. After 91, India changed when they opened up in 91. That's when liberalization sort of came in.
And the government was like, now we don't want to take too much. It's different way of operating.
Yeah. So again, if you want to get technical,
Yes.
the socialism that India practiced was called Fabian socialism.
Fabian
so people who want to read up about it, that was the model was Fabian socialism. That Nehru and that's what India had in those days.
So when we talk about like usually like in the world right now, like America being very capitalist and India at some point was very socialist. Now it's at the mix. Like what are your like usual thoughts about like operating an economy like India, a country where you have like both sides of people who are very vulnerable and you want to protect them, and then you also want to have capitalism. Like what is the balance according to you in these things?
Ultimately, balance has to be done by people, right? How do I put it? So you can't. India is a huge country. No one person can solve those problems. I mean, they'll take time. You'll have to get the government involved in some way. Even NGOs, if you want to solve problems, the government has to be a part of the solution. So what we did, for example, when we started my next company, TechSpan, we decided that we will give options to everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. So when we sold Headstrong, TechSpan merged into Headstrong. So when Headstrong was sold in 2011, my driver in India made 50,000 rupees.
Wow.
So he keeps telling me he wants to invest in all new. I keep telling him it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
You win some, you lose some, but But that's what we did. So what made me really happy was out of our 4,000 people in Headstrong, 1,000 people made more. First of all, 50 people made more than $1 million US.
Wow.
And 1,000 people made in India made more than 10 lakhs, $1 million rupees. Right. And at least 25 people went out and started something. So the sort of, I always say it's the work function. You know, when it's the charge you give an electron for it to escape from orbit. Right.
So you remember that to 25 people?
I think 25 people felt they were financially comfortable enough to go out and take a risk.
So like in terms of operating models in the world, you are saying like, that is one model which you found as a very good model in which prosperity for a very good section of people happened.
Yeah. So actually, if you go back and read management theory and stuff, you've heard of Peter Drucker, I'm sure. Big name. Now, Peter Drucker lost his so-called popularity, if I use that term, because he took out his thought was that the difference in salary between the senior-most guy and the junior-most guy in a company can't exceed 32x, some number like that.
Oh, I
forget the number now, but he said you can't have someone drawing 10 million and this guy getting 20,000 or 50,000. And so a lot of senior people who used to give the consulting contracts didn't like that. I do believe that should be the model.
Okay.
I do believe that there should be a fixed difference between what the highest person and the lowest person earn.
So, but that doesn't happen in America. Like
it doesn't happen anywhere.
It doesn't happen anywhere.
But ideally, that is how it should be.
So you're saying like if we are optimizing for prosperity of people, which is what we are doing with entrepreneurship or like any sense? You are saying a model like that.
I'm not saying stocks is completely different. I'm saying salary.
Salary wise, okay.
Yeah. If I have started a company, I've got stock that goes to very good. But the salary that the CEO gets, or the highest salary in the company and the lowest salary in the company, should have a ratio.
Should have a ratio. Very cool.
Like 32 or some number. You decide and then you run it. That's, I mean, I don't, it may be a quasi-socialist thought in a capitalist economy, but to me that's the right thing. You make your money on stock, absolutely. So if you're clothing a division, I can understand divisions clothing. But just laying off people to reduce your costs, to me, makes very little sense. I have a different logic, and that's what I have practiced in both the companies, or 3 or 4 companies that I have run. See, someone who's, even in India today, let's say someone who's drawing 1 crore in salary, if you cut 10% of his salary, or he gives up 10%, he or she, their life isn't going to change. Nothing's going to change for them. Right? But someone who's drawing 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs, if you take them out of a job, their whole life changes. Right? So my logic was, when we had slowdowns, is just get the senior people and say, hey, take a 10% pay cut. If market comes back, you get it back as bonus at the end of the year. But right now, because we are seeing a downturn, you do that.
So help me understand how, I mean, I think what a lot of people give logic and like, hey, we are doing all this to create a more efficient ecosystem for people to progress in a company, right? So sometimes that is so layoff and firing are different in a way. So you are saying firing is different and layoff is different. Okay.
Firing for performance, I have no problems. As long as you define the norms and people don't meet them. But my logic is, when, let's say, everyone, the senior management of a company is sitting in this room and they're taking a decision to lay off. My first question is, okay, who in this room is going to get laid off? And then we'll go down the line. Now, the minute you do that, people will say, no, we'll take a pay cut.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you're saying at the top management, you first decide.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying I want to save cost, why are you not cutting top management?
I see. Okay.
So tell them, hey, who is the first? Tell me 1 or 2 people who we have to lay off in this room. No one will give you. Then it's very easy to talk about pay cut. And also, when you do pay cuts, like when we did pay cuts here after the bubble burst in 2000 or so, we said you'll cut the pay, but no one will get less than 50,000. So someone who is drawing 52, we just cut 2,000 of their salary. Right, that kind of thing.
Oh, I see. So you're saying across the organization, you do some cut and you do more cut at the top management level, and you keep going through the downturn, and then your management can continue to grow in stocks and you can continue to grow salary. Okay. So you're saying, okay, that's how you solve the problem of a downturn. So, and performance is separate. Like when you are talking about like...
Performance is complete. That every company has to run their own thing.
Yeah.
You let people go on performance, no problem at all. What you can also do is, like they've done this time with the slowdown, a lot of IT services companies enhance their performance norm. So instead of 5% getting cut, they cut 7 or 10 or what. So you change your performance. Say, I need a higher performance norm this year. I mean, I'm okay with that as long as there's a logic to what you're doing. But just firing people because you've got to fire X number and get them out, that doesn't make to me doesn't make any sense. In fact, it's your mistake to let that go to that point.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're supposed to know market, you're supposed to do growth, all that kind of stuff. So why are you making other people pay for your mistakes?
So, I mean, I think this is very interesting because, Elon Musk has a very specific style of running companies. And also leaders have changed. Like when Parag was running Twitter, it was a very different story. Now Elon is running, he's like 80%, cut. So, and he is now saying that, okay, I'm able to run this efficiently. Like in a way, it's the previous management that made the decision. He didn't make the decisions, but he has a different style of running. What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, it's exactly look at the UK. UK today is saying economy is doing okay, blah, blah, blah. But it's not the Labour government. They haven't even given their first budget. It is the earlier government that had actually put in some steps that have made that impact. Right? It's just the way it is. People take credit for what's happened before. A lot of times. Not always, but that happens quite often.
Yeah. Okay, want to go back to your stories. 75, 80, you continued working on HCL. All six of you stayed together on this company for a very long time?
19 years.
For 19 years, all six of you stayed together. So I think maybe no one never talked about, like one of my audiences, startup founders from KGP. How did you guys stick together for this long?
So, a couple of things, very important. I mean, multiple things. One is that we were friends. Second is our spouses knew each other. Third is we decided, and in the computer business, how do you make black money? So there was no cash involved. So there was no question about, his wife, where did she get those diamonds from, this, that. That didn't come up. Right. So as long as you do that, and the other thing was, there were multiple companies. So let's say reprographics. I was in charge. Right. It's my decision.
I see. So you just under the brand HCL, you had different divisions and you had one owner among your six and in terms of overall, let's say one division performs very well. But I mean, still it's a part of HCL. So you still split the profits.
Yeah. So ultimately profits are shareholders. Everyone had a fixed salary, right? Your shares are there. It doesn't matter which division does well, doesn't do well. It's not that I have extra shares in one company and less in the other. That happened over time because some people, like when NIT, we invested, some people who were overseas thought that they didn't want to invest in India because dollars India bhejenge to wapas kaise aayenge, that kind of thing. In 1980, they didn't invest. Now, NIT did well, didn't do well, they didn't get a piece of that. So those are some of the things that happened over time. But basically that, and the other thing is we also, because everyone is going to different locations, we also put in some fairly strict auditing norms so that black money, no cash. And it doesn't, in computer business, everyone pays by check. No one really pays by cash. I mean, we had one payment by cash. I remember during the Punjab problem, on 31st March, suddenly someone from Intelligence Bureau came and he wanted to buy a 17.5 lakh computer, but he'd come with cash.
Oh my God.
So we told him...
At that time, 17 lakh.
17.5.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money,
yeah.
So we told him we can't take the cash because my bank will not take it.
Yeah.
He said, who's your bank manager? We said, Indian Bank, downstairs in Nehru Place. They are a bank. So he said, okay. He went, met the manager. I got a call from the manager saying it's okay.
Oh my God. You were like, okay.
It's okay.
In the end, I want the money in the bank account.
I don't care. As long as you say it's okay, otherwise you question and I put cash into the bank if I put that kind of cash. So that was the only big cash dealing that I remember. I don't think we had.
Another part of you all six staying together is all of you thought that this is the best opportunity for us to grow together. All these 19 years. This is the best opportunity for us. The maximum growth is happening for us here.
Yeah. Also, people were busy doing something, and also it's only once the wealth got created, then some people decided they wanted to do. Like Pami Puri decided he wanted to get into the hospitality industry. So he has a couple of hotels. He went and bought a couple of hotels, stuff like that. Different people decided they wanted to go do different things, and that's fine.
Got it. And what is how is your relationship now with other five? Are you in touch or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely, unfortunately, Pami Puri passed away, but his wife and family are very close friends.
So you are still friends. The spouses are still friends. Okay. So it's like lifetime kind of relationship.
Some more friendly, some not. Because again, people
change.
Yeah, now people are in Singapore, in Gurgaon. How often do you meet them? So,
Okay, so then you did this HCL for like how many years before? So Headstrong is a different company that got started after
Yeah,
that?
so what happened was I came here in 1989 to start HCL's international operations, if I use that term, HCL America, which has now become HCL Technologies, that whole setup. I came here temporarily. I went back, I was here for 2 years, I went back for 2 years, I came back for 2 years, I went back again. And then when I was getting to 50, I thought of kafi ho gaya because I used to travel like crazy. And not that that has changed. But I thought time to retire and really enjoy life, so to say. Two mistakes I made. I didn't plan my retirement. So what ended up happening is I ended up meeting people at home, advice or whatever. And in the US, it's a problem because people start coming 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. They are there all night. And no chai, give them tea, coffee, whatever. And so your poor wife has to do it all, right? And in fact, when we first came here, 6 months later, my wife told me, you made me an ABCD. And I said, how can you be an ABCD? You weren't born in America.
Yes, you were not.
She said, no, Aya, Bera, cook, driver. Which ultimately, but whatever.
Yeah.
So she said, this is not going to last. I'll pay for a business center. You go work from a business center. At home, it's not good. I can't do this.
Yeah.
So then I ended up using a business center, started talking to people, ended up, actually the story goes a little longer than what happened was when I left, some of our other people left and some of them started a company in Virginia, DC area called Scansoft, and they were doing services. When I left HCL, my lawyer, I had lawyers, his dentist partner was representing Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs wanted to invest in India. But they wanted someone to do industry due diligence. So he wanted to check if I'd be willing to do it. So my lawyer talked to me and I told him, look, I am happy to do it, but only after I leave. I can't do it while I'm a part of HCL. So in fact, when I signed my release with HCL in New York, I walked a couple of blocks to the Goldman office and signed my consulting contract with them. So Goldman, we did some due diligence for them in India. They wanted a squeaky clean company. Now, India, there was a myriad of laws which made it very difficult to be squeaky clean. For example, there was a law called FERA, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, which said that if you had an overseas outstanding receivable of 180 days, you have to go legal. Now, if my payment came on the 181st day, I was technically in contravention of that law because I hadn't gone legal on day 180. That was not okay with Goldman. Okay, where are we going to find a company in India?
Yeah.
So we told them ultimately that, look, you're wasting your time, you're wasting my time. You want a clean company, a squeaky clean company, start a company and keep it squeaky clean. So they said, why don't you give us a proposal? So then I called these Scansoft guys and said, hey, Goldman is willing to give money. Aap mere ko proposal do. Goldman, people hear the name, they think they put a bigger proposal. So he then added some more people, ex-HCL people who were in the market, and they needed someone to run it, and that's how TechSpan got started, basically.
And TechSpan later renamed to Headstrong?
No, so what happened was TechSpan, we initially started to be domain focused in 3 domains: financial, telecom, one more, I forget now, I think technology. But the minute we hit the market, we realized that e-commerce, it was 99. E-commerce was the big 3.
Okay.
So within 6 weeks, we switched completely to e-commerce. And we started 1st January 99. The month of June 99, we did $1 million in the month.
Wow.
We ended the year at 15.4. And November, December were cash positive months. We did in calendar 2000, we did 67 million. We made a 4 million profit, which is how we survived basically. And then the bubble burst. So then revenue from 67 came down to some 32 or some number, like 30 million. Something. That's what happened in the meanwhile. Okay, so when I was at HCL, we had a joint venture with James Martin and Company to address the Y2K market. Right. I was the chairman of that joint venture. Now, subsequently, that joint venture sort of got dissolved, but James Martin and Company had gone out and they had gone into consulting and stuff like that, and they had renamed the company Headstrong. So when I met them, they were looking to set up a back office in India. And so we were talking to them to say, why don't we become your back office in India? But they wanted to hold equity in the back office. Now, whether you're holding 5% or 10%, you still have to do due diligence to look at the valuation. So ultimately, and the logic was we would hold 5 or 10% and then they would hold, so that way they felt comfortable. What ended up happening is after that due diligence, we ended up merging the two companies because they had taken 200 odd million in them during the last quarter of the bubble. And they had actually blown up 140 million out of that. So when we merged with them, they had 60 million, out of which they paid 20 odd million. So the merged company, and we decided to keep the Headstrong name because we wanted to do consulting level sales, and it had $40 million. So revenue was, I think, in the 60 million range. We were in the 20, 30 million range. Total of 80, 90 million with 40 million cash. That's how
the merger happened, and because of due diligence, keeping equity in India, they wanted in India too, and they wanted
a back office in India.
They wanted back.
And they had a back office in Manila. So we had India, they had Manila, and what they were supposed to run the company. That's how it was structured. I was supposed to again step out and go to India, and I work between India and Manila to put the libraries together, common libraries, so that we are agnostic to where we deliver from. The customer has no idea. I could deliver from Delhi, Bangalore, or Manila, and the customer, it would be seamless to them. That was the plan. What happened was that they had the PE group who had invested, they had recruited a CEO whose job was to reduce costs. So the thinking in the company was if he called someone to his room, one-on-one, okay, he's going to get fired. Pink slip, as they call it in the US. So that is not the culture with which you grow a company. So we done the merger happened on the Diwali day in 2003. I remember I was in New York. I was going to catch a flight back to California for Diwali. Diwali was the next day. And I get a call from the lawyer saying that Delaware merger has just been passed. I told him, for us in India, it's probably the most auspicious thing to have the new company start on Diwali day. Right? But whatever. So it happened in October. Middle January, I get a call from the directors, the private equity guys, saying, we fired the CEO. You've got to take over. Now, if you're not interested in the job, you have to do it for 6 months till we find someone else. If you're interested, then you have to make a commitment of 2 years.
2 years, okay.
I thought to myself, we merged the company. You had one CEO for 3 months. Then you have me for 6 months. Then you have a third guy. To kabhi chalega nahi.
I mean, I'm also invested in this company.
Not that. Then the company is not going to. The merger is going to be a failure. So I said, okay, I'll commit 2 years. And what I did was, no one in Headstrong knew me per se. They didn't know my name maybe. So I sent a message out on Saturday, I remember. One page message, blast internally, saying I was taking over, who I was, a little bit of background, all that stuff. And I took the flight Sunday morning the red eye to get there on Sunday morning. So from Monday, I'll go to the office there. When when I landed in DC, it was snowing. So the first thing I told my PE guy that I will do this, but I'm not going to live in Virginia. California is still my home. I'll keep an apartment here and all that stuff, but
Snow is, this is not, I'm ready to compromise.
I'm not. They were fine with that.
Okay.
What also happened was, when I got to office, there were about 50 internal messages saying, first time someone from head office has communicated with us. And then I thought to myself that, I assumed that communication was open. So then I did a couple of video calls every month, or town hall, all that, made sure that there was more than regular communication. So that people are on the same plane. Everyone knows what we're doing and stuff like that. That worked quite well for us. And it was the old, there were some issues we had to sort out. Everything is running smoothly. There were some senior people who were playing games, if I use that term. Ultimately, we had to let them go. But you don't want old politics to come in, and we lost some good people before we were able to make that change. But that's life.
Yeah. Okay, so at Headstrong, how long did you stay there?
So Headstrong, we signed in 2003 October. We sold in 2011 May.
2011 May.
8 years.
Wow. And then, so Headstrong was the time where you spent 8 years, and after that, where did you move in 2011?
So basically from 2012, I decided to work with technology companies in healthcare and education to try and see if we can leverage technology to provide better outcomes for the economically underprivileged, handicapped in India. Let's put it that way.
So after this journey, I think if I understand from a wealth perspective, probably like starting of HCL was maybe a little bit, it was not hard because you started making profit on your calculators. But from a wealth perspective, you were good with HCL. But then this is about Headstrong was about, you were about let's take ownership here and get this in a good place. But then how did this journey change into more about community and underprivileged? Was it always a theme in your life?
It was always a theme. In fact, I remember I gave my first $1 million to Kharagpur for the G.S. Sanyal school in 96. And I remember Shiv Nada mentioning to my wife that how come he is donating money to the institute before he owns a house, home. Right. It was just one of those things. I hadn't even thought of it that way. But,
that was more of that was an important thing in you about giving
I just
back.
felt that, look, who I am, what I've been able to achieve, a large role has been played by the institute, teachers, parents, all that stuff. So in some way you got to acknowledge if you can. And I was in a position where I could.
So I have a very, I have a philosophical question around this. There are different type of donors, and everyone is trying to see in some way about leaving their legacy in the world. And some people look at having their name on the thing that they donate, because it probably serves them as well as in some way this creates an inspiration in their way. When I look at the things that you gave to IIT Kharagpur, when I was at IIT Kharagpur, I knew a lot of other schools because it was in their name. But when I didn't know much about GS Sanyal until I did a little research, and I'm like, oh wow, Arjun donated this. This is you are one of the alumnus. You just have a very different way of giving, and your name is not there. What's your thinking around this?
That's a good question. I don't know. I just wanted to acknowledge that those teachers actually played a bigger role than just being teachers in a way. And again, there is a tradition in Indian scriptures of Guru Dakshina. You read about it a little bit, how people do it. I just thought this might be a way to just do a little bit for them. It's not that. Also, again, it's nice to read some of these old Indian scriptures. They actually, some of them are very philosophical, it's amazing how much knowledge they had. So what they say is, after you're dead and gone, all you leave behind are your children and your reputation. Think of it, so true, right?
Yeah.
Your money and all that, who cares, right? So if you look at life that way, then live your life that way.
So, for you, G.S. Sanyal was more than a teacher who gave in such ways.
So he was my head of department when I was there. He was president of Gymkhana when I was G6 Sports. So, interaction with him was quite a lot. Also, post IIT, lots of things. He has taken me for a meeting at the Education Ministry as the IIT Kharagpur representative to discuss which computer to get and, all that kind of stuff. So he was the director at that time. Yeah. And so sometimes you think, look, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to give me the kind of position, respect, whatever, in front of other people that he did. And so...
So you just feel very grateful to him, and it's more about, so I think your style is more of I think that, I don't want this thing to serve me. This is me, responsibility from my shoulders to this thing.
I try not to be, how do I put it? Yeah, you're right. It's I don't like a pending loan. I pay my credit card.
It's like a liability off your shoulder that's okay. Now at least this is balance sheet is clean. Here where, in your head, it's IIT gave me this much, I gave this, our balance sheet is clean. Yeah. It doesn't need to have my name to have it's continuing. Okay. And that's how you give M.N. Farooqui Innovation Center too. What's the story about M.N. Farooqui Innovation?
No, so Professor Farooqui and I spent a lot of time together post IIT also. He actually was a consultant with us in HCL for a while. Then he went as Vice Chancellor, Aligarh Muslim. He was Vice Chancellor of a university in Malaysia, stuff like that. Got to know his family quite well too. In fact, when I was at college, I used to be a goalkeeper. And because I played basketball, and I have big hands, and I didn't do too much diving. I used to try and anticipate where the ball's going to come. And the ball would stick, it won't fall out of my hand. So I was generally, those little kids who would roam around campus, they always, they point, if you're playing games and all, they'll point to you. So I was known as Chumbak Goli. So, and the other thing was, every time I went, I used to walk from RP Hall, it's not too far, to play football. Some rickshawala would give me a free lift. I used to wonder why. Then I realized they were betting on the game.
Yeah.
It was quite funny.
So, so now the whole story about IIT KGP, then we were getting among the top 30 rankers. Now our ranking also is a little bit changing. We do get a couple of people from top 100. I'm curious, how have you seen the development of IIT Kharagpur over all these years? Also from an entrepreneur's perspective, the India developing, what should KGPs be into now?
Yeah. So unfortunately, Calcutta has lost its relevance as a industrial hub, so to say. Bangalore, Bombay, Hyderabad, Baroda, Pune, Delhi, they have taken that. So Kharagpur, I think the biggest problem Kharagpur has is that it has no hinterland on which you can do things. So it is truly remote.
Yeah.
And unless over time we can build some economy around Kharagpur, it's going to stay remote. And it's unlikely that people with lower ranks are going to come in there. Right? What might happen, earlier the government policy was if they had 100 crores, they wanted to do BLSI, they'd give 20 crores to each of the 5 IITs. none of them were suboptimal. So none of them really did very much, right? Because today, if you want to buy an electron microscope, it's about $10 million or whatever the number, right? If you don't give that 10 million and more, how will... So they've now changed their thinking. And now what they're saying is they'll give it to 2 institutes and make them centers of excellence in that area. Now it's becoming a kind of a political thing. Kharagpur has to fight for what they want and where they got you can't be an expert on everything, right? On some things you're going to be really, really good, on some you'll be just average, if I use that term.
Yeah.
And so they've got to take those decisions.
And from your experience over all these years, do you have any ideas in mind about like which areas Kharagpur, if we have to specialize as an institute, which areas make a lot more sense?
They have to decide that depending on their faculty, how good their faculty is, and where they want to invest. Yeah, I really like what they did at Stanford. What Thurman did here, Thurman and Miller. They said, if you're not world class, then we'll close you down and give that money to people who are world class. So they closed down nursing college, they closed down ocean engineering, and gave it to electrical, gave it to
I see.
So they wanted what they called steeples of excellence. Now we can't do it that dramatically in India, but I think what I would like to see is everyone giving a target, and people who meet them should get extra money in the next budget. Who don't meet them should, till they catch up or whatever. That's how it's got to be. People have to be incented. And if you're doing well, you'll do more projects, you'll automatically get more money. Right?
Yeah. So from a student perspective, in India with 1.4 billion, top 1% does not really matter. Like once you're in IIT, it doesn't matter where you are. Like people are still so talented, very high. Now, from a perspective, like someone going to KGP now, and you are in Silicon Valley, you have seen how AI is developing. What would be your advice to these people who are in college now, going to undergrad, studying in different departments and...
So, first of all, engineering has very little to do with department. Because now you're doing minors. Most of them are doing...
Minor and double degrees these days,
So, engineering is basically a way of thinking. What it does is, when you see a problem with multiple variables, you break it down into the critical variables and are able to get to a suboptimal solution. Right? To me, that's engineering. That's why you do it well in management, and you do well in lots of areas. Yes, there are some people who do the exact calculation and stuff, but not every problem you can do an exact thing unless you have a computer, sometimes even a quantum machine, because there's so many variables that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And 99% of the time, the optimum solution is good enough.
Yeah.
Because time is a critical factor.
It's 80% of the solution solves the problem. You don't have to worry about 20%.
So I think that's what engineering teaches you.
Yes.
Is how to look at that. Yes, the bad news is it teaches you too much logic, too little intuitive. If you can find an engineer who has intuition and logic and works, that he's the ideal person. So that way I look at my wife. She is much more intuitive than I am. But much more emotional, much less logical.
Lead with intuition and
sometimes
then you
that's
have logic
important.
too. Yeah.
But the other thing I tell people is, why do you worry? So I only worry if my worry can change the outcome of what I'm worrying about. Otherwise, why worry? Think of solutions, think of action, think of doing something.
Yeah.
Worry doesn't solve any problem.
Kind of like Stoic saying about only worry about the things that are in your control, and you don't have to think about the things that are not in your control. So you focus your energy on what is in your control, because everything is not in control for everyone.
Yeah. And what's not in control, you take a intelligent guess or risk or whatever word you want to use.
Yeah. So over years, India how have you seen the growth of India over like since 1970s, if I have to say?
Oh, a lot of changes, lots of changes.
Moved from socialism to a little bit.
You see the middle class is moving up. I mean, India, some things I think they need to change. Another Kharagpur alum, Krishan Khanna, 60, I think. He does this eye watch. He's got eye watch. He's trying to be a agent of change. He's been doing a lot of work in that area. He came up with a very interesting thing. Because, education is still restricted in our country. We should open it.
Yes.
I am spending $20 billion sending kids abroad. Why can't I have them in India? Tell all these foreign universities to come to India. So he said in 1991, we unshackled our goddess Lakshmi. Why don't we unshackle Saraswati?
Wow. That's a very interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, which I think is...
Yeah. But I mean, I think, so when you say unshackle Saraswati, you mean like education. And when you say education is still restricted, what do you mean by education is still restricted?
You can't pay, like a professor can't have a salary in an IIT more than a secretary in the government of India.
Oh, I see. Is these okay?
And what they're worried about is if they let foreign universities in, they take all your professors. Then at that salary, who will go to an IIT or some government college to teach? Right. Plus, they'll charge these fees. They won't do SC/ST reservation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think ultimately what you got to do is say open colleges will help you with land or whatever. But I want X% on scholarship from the underprivileged class.
So as an alternate way of reservation to have like a very, it's like
they do that in hospitals. Hospitals, they don't have reservation for patients. How do you know? But hospitals they get land subsidized, but they have to have 10% free for people like that.
But like how would you get people to actually, so you were saying, okay, qualification needs to be at merit, but then in a way you were saying like, okay, merit
10%
scholarship
principal, 10% on
scholarship on the basis of like where you belong from.
Just merit.
Just merit. So in a way, I think merit, we all know merit is the best way where anyone can come from any class and get to it. So it is like we are running into problems in here too about diversity and merit in the US right now. So
it's a different problem. See, my thing is, if I do it for higher education today, there are lots of people who come whose schooling is not done right. So they don't even get the opportunity to be able to try for this. So the government is trying to solve all problems at the same time. Nahi hoga. Or it will take a long time. So there are people who know how to solve this problem. Let them solve this problem. You go solve your school problem. Try and make your schools as good as any. And Delhi is doing a great job of that. So what Delhi has done is the government schools that were under Delhi government, their teachers are paid an average of 200 or 300 rupees a month more than private schools. Average.
Wow.
And their results are better than the private school results.
It's kind of funny. I think Arvind Kejriwal gets a lot of criticism, but this has not been talked about much.
No, because obviously schools and healthcare, two things that Delhi has made a major difference. They're working on a number of other things. But these two are models that the rest of the country should take and run with.
Like how to improve public schools, make it better than private, and that's what the government can focus on.
So the other thing he's done, I don't know if you know, and I have the documents, Delhi doesn't have an outlay-based budget. They have an outcome-based budget.
Outcome-based budget? Very interesting. I've never heard of that,
Yeah, so every school principal has every quarter what he's supposed to achieve. And he'll get his money only if he achieves that.
So it's like commission, sales commission.
It's exactly like you run a private company.
So if you have like a base
you
pay,
set
and
it up. No pay. You set it up from his school. He loses his job, or someone else will become the principal.
Okay.
If he doesn't meet those.
So you got to perform as a professor.
And you got to say what I'll do. You got to take a target and then you have to achieve it. and they'll give you the money.
So define goals very clearly and perform, and then only you get
That's
paid.
outcome-based budget.
Yeah,
so the budget is based on outcomes, not on outlays.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is like very different from these topics. Like you see what happened with India in Olympics right now. I mean, everyone is like, okay, what is happening in India? But like, we got 0 gold. So what's like your thinking? Like, not, maybe that should be outcome based too in some form.
Well, yeah, they've got to, every, the Indian Olympic Committee has wrestling, this, that. They should all say what their target is.
How many gold medals they want to get? And
gold,
then,
silver, bronze, whatever. Sometimes you don't want that. You say, I'll be in the top 5, or I'll be in the whatever. And come in and, not all of them will meet the target. Then you have to sit down and explain why. Try and make those corrections.
Yeah. Coming back to 2012 and later, you got into this underprivileged, supporting, spending more time. And also along with that, I mean, I know you support a lot of IIT Kharagpur startup founders. Like, tell me.
Yeah, so, you end up, how do I put it? Advising, mentoring, whatever word you want to use. A lot of them, because a lot of them are first-time startups. They just need a little encouragement if they're doing the right thing. Many of them don't understand business per se. So I end up doing that. Don't spend too much time. Don't, you have only a limited amount of time. So how much can you spend?
It's kind of funny. I was talking to someone from KGP yesterday, and he said, like, I'm just in touch with Arjun, and I just told him I need this help. And within 15 minutes, Arjun made like 5 intros. And this is like, I mean, given there are so many people who I don't know, this is like one random person I know who just said that this is like more of you just opening up your network. I mean, I've seen you do this for a lot of people. Like, what's your thinking about network? Like, I meet 2 types of people. One who try to protect their network, who is like, hey, because I have a credibility too. And I mean, you have a lot of credibility, but yes, you maybe take a little more risk sometimes. So what's your thinking about network?
Not really. It's ultimately how much goodwill you have. Ultimately, I look at my biggest asset is the goodwill I've built up over all these years. I probably helped some of these people when they needed help. So, when I ask them, it's very difficult for them. They want to do it, and I'm not forcing anyone. Someone wants to help, they'll help. If they don't want to help, they'll not respond or not say anything. That kind of thing. But, it sort of works.
Yeah, but I mean, you believe in opening doors and you do it. What's your philosophy usually? Like you first
My
understand?
point is simple. If they ask me, I'll open doors for them. So if I ask them, they should have opened their door for me. So it works. I have to reciprocate what I expect them to do.
Got it. So in a way, you are like here, and if anyone needs help, you give it, and the other person needs help, you also give it. So, I mean, this is like very much of an open, you have such a vast network, and you opening up your network in this way opens so many possibilities for a lot of people.
I mean, ultimately, let's say someone needs money. You talk to a guy, if the guy thinks you're worth it, he'll give you the money.
Yeah, but I mean, you are just like opening it. You are like, you are still making the decision. Like you would want to invest in the right startup or whatever.
So I don't, that's why I let my son do it, because I don't have the time to do due diligence, all that stuff. Otherwise, I'll get stuck in that and not be able to do the...
Okay, very cool. So now like in this AI world, how you are being in the Valley, seeing a lot of momentum happening here. What are you seeing like as the future going towards? As I mean, what's your thinking around?
To me, it's like what happened when computers first came.
Okay.
Everyone was worried about jobs. And there were union strikes and all that stuff. Well, look what's happened. Computers have created more jobs. But the jobs, you need to know how to use a computer. Right?
Yeah.
Or use the application on the computer. I think AI will go the same way. And ultimately, if we look at what is AI going to... Let's take the industry I know, a BPO industry. So AI, e-worker, for example, does a repetitive job very well. So they do a repetitive job, great. But repetitive jobs could be 60, 80%. They're not going to be 100%. Right? So my thinking is, let's say I've got three e-workers and I have one human being behind them. Over time, that three will become five, it'll become seven, it'll become 10, right? Because they'll understand some of the exceptions that get repeated a little bit. Yeah, but that's how the human being behind them is never going to go away. And it all depends on how repetitive the job is.
How repetitive the job is.
And on the other side, it also depends on how neural my AI can become. If I can get my AI to start thinking like a human being, and there are people trying to work on that'll make a big change. Right? Because then I think human beings have to then look at what they can do that's above what just computation and all. It's unlikely computers will have intuition. Or
So in a way, what we are saying is like things are gonna come down to like intuition, because intuition cannot be copied by AI. Like logic can be copied by AI, or like AI can get as good as like bringing new logic and maybe solving problems which about like connections and all. But intuition is something which is very natural to a human being, and we don't see anything.
Right now, I don't see it. It might happen in the future. I don't see it right now. And there are new technologies coming where rules are still not defined, which then will take, unless the rules get defined, robots and all can't come in. So look at nano. So they are saying that the science of nano is not the traditional classical science. Nanos follow a different rules of science. We don't know what they are right now. Right? So for us, it'll be a unlearning and relearning. I have to forget my laws of motion and Newtonian physics and start learning stuff anew. Right? So things are going, nano is something we know today. What is also going to change is this whole genetics and healthcare, and that's going to go through a major change. Right? Someone's going to have to look at Chinese medicine in traditional Indian medicine and say, what was it that they were doing that was effective and how I can get it in.
So, what do you see about labor mobility actually in all this? Like one part you said is like, okay, jobs gonna go away, happen during computers, new jobs are getting created, people need to know how to use AI. But like does this transition looks like really quick to you right now?
Well, how do I put it? It's going to accelerate over time. It's not quick. In 99, 2000, everyone thought brick and mortar is going to close down, everything's going to be e-commerce. But we now, how many, 24 years, still hasn't happened?
No.
I think you're going to see maybe not so long, but a longish time period even for AI. By the way, AI has been around for a long time. It's only now it's accelerating a little bit. But you're going to see that with every new technology. Because people have to get trained. And it's not, a few people will know it and use it. But by the time it becomes for general use, you've got to train people, and depending how complex it is. Right now, technology and medicine would not have happened if COVID hadn't come up.
Yeah.
So what's happened now is that doctors are starting to accept it. Even today, no one will get an X-ray read by a computer and say, this is what the problem is. The doctor has to sign off on it. Yet the computer probably has more knowledge than the doctor.
Yeah, nowadays ChatGPT can get you better advice sometimes.
But people don't feel comfortable. The doctor doesn't feel comfortable. He feels threatened, in fact. You're going to see all this change happen. But we have to skill our people. We can't leave them unskilled. That will become a real problem, because they will then it's very much like what happened in Russia. You'll have revolution of that kind. You read about it in science fiction, where they break up robots and they do this because they feel that they're being threatened in some way. Who knows?
So, when I look at one field, I look at regulators who are like more about like, hey, you can't do this. And one is like innovation. Innovation progresses at its own pace. Like, I don't think any of us has control over how innovation does. But then regulators are like, okay, no, you cannot do. and all these things like even doctor as a trade or lawyer as a trade, which is getting disrupted and they are feeling threatened about losing their job. It's because there is a regulation. They are feeling protected by being a doctor, being a lawyer. So how have you seen this from your time? Because you saw calculators coming in, and in a way, some trade was getting disrupted at that time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, calculators weren't allowed in exams. They're still not allowed in exams. They're talking about taking tablets and smartphones out from schools. Right. Again, if you let things go free, there's one thing about it, helps innovation, lots of things happen. But then there are some negative effects of that. And so you have to start controlling it. And regulators have to become innovators in a way. Most of the time, regulators are regulating the past, not the future. Whereas by its very thing, it should be the future. Right? Yes, you'll make some mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes when they try and predict the future or try and innovate and try and do something new. And so regulators, they should be able to do it and admit, we did this wrong, we're changing it. Unfortunately, those processes are too long, the egos are too big, there are too many people involved, everyone has a different agenda, stuff like that. That becomes a problem.
Got it. So regulators should be focused on regulating. Regulators have a role in the world, and that is about regulating more on the future, so that the negative impacts can be minimized.
So I should say 2030, what should it look like? You predict it and then give the regulation so that today people know that, hey, that's going to happen, then I might as well build my stuff with that limitation in mind. Instead of letting people do it and then say limit what you're doing, that's a big problem.
So, in a way, regulators' job is to regulate the negative impacts that can have on a society.
Yeah.
And it's like about balancing it out and allowing innovation to continue to progress.
Now, the key is who defines what's negative, who defines what's positive. Yeah, those are issues. And there are no answers to that because what is good for one is not good for the other. Is not.
Very cool. I'm going to ask you one last question. I think when we met like a couple of days ago, I was like asking you about where do you spend most of your time. You said, I spent like 6 months in India and 6 months here. You have seen you have lived in this country for like how, probably like 30 years. And when I was asking you okay, what are you thinking long term? And you said I'm going to be spending more time in Delhi. I see healthcare improve. Tell me your thinking about being here and what made you being in this mindset now.
You know, having grown up in India, India is home. So in my mind at least, that is home. I'm pretty comfortable here. This is also like home, but that is home. And a lot of my friends from school and college are in India. There are some here, but lots of them are in India. There's a certain amount of family that's there too. Now family is all over the world. So, I mean, some close family still in India. So, and in a way, you look at when you get old, you need to be, hopefully you'll need some kind of care, you'll need all that. It's available in India today. Not just at a lower cost, but the people there are much more dedicated. They don't see it as a job. They see it as something, it's much more, it's like family. Although you might...
There's compassion a little bit.
There are ultimately, it's likely when you look at someone to support you, will be someone who's worked with you for 10, 20 years. Right? They're more like family than just employee or someone who's coming. Yes, when you go to the hospital, nursing care here might be better than in India. But those things I think will change.
So overall, I think one of the big reasons why people want to be in the US is quality of life. I think that's what a lot of people move for. So you were saying in terms of quality of life, having you experienced
Yeah, but
India.
when you get to a certain age, what is quality of life when you're 30, 40, 50, 60 is different when you're 80, 90. And so what you expectation for quality of life is, yes, pollution and all. There's some things you can't control.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you so much, Arjun, for taking the time to chat. I really appreciate it. I am looking forward for your feedback on this story, and thank you so much for watching this.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. Send it to me, and then I'll give you the feedback.
Yes.
Okay. I better run. 4 baje.
Thank you so much.